The package lay ominously on Emily's doorstep, its brown cardboard exterior concealing some unknown contents. She stared at it, pulse quickening. This couldn't be right. She hadn't ordered anything. Cautiously, she approached and picked it up, heart racing. As she turned it over, the shipping label made her blood run cold. It was addressed to her, but the return address was unfamiliar. Hands trembling, Emily hurried inside and placed the package on her kitchen counter. What was going on? Her mind raced with possibilities. Was this some kind of trap? A prank? Slowly, she retrieved a pair of scissors and carefully slit open the packing tape. Holding her breath, she lifted the flaps. Inside was an ordinary-looking box, sealed with more tape. Steeling herself, Emily began to unwrap it. As she peeled back the layers, a sinking feeling grew in the pit of her stomach. This wasn't a mistake. Someone had intentionally delivered this to her door. But why? Once the final layer of tape was removed, Emily lifted the lid of the box. Inside, nestled amidst packing peanuts, was a single item, a small, unmarked envelope. Her heart pounding, she extracted it and tore it open. A single sheet of paper fluttered out, covered in an unfamiliar scrawl. "We're watching you," the note read. "If you know what's good for you, you'll keep your mouth shut." Emily's hands shook as she read the ominous message. Someone was threatening her, but why? What had she done to provoke this? Panic began to set in as she considered the implications. Was her safety in danger? What else might these unknown individuals be capable of? Forcing herself to take a deep breath, Emily tried to think rationally. She needed to report this to the authorities immediately. Snatching up her phone, she hurried to the living room and dialed 911. As the call connected, she glanced anxiously back at the mysterious package, a sense of dread growing with each passing second. The dispatcher's calm voice on the other end of the line did little to ease Emily's growing sense of panic. She explained the situation as clearly and concisely as she could, describing the package, the threatening note, and her rising fear. The dispatcher assured her that officers were on their way, but the minutes ticked by agonizingly slow. Unable to sit still, Emily began pacing the room, eyes darting between the front door and the offending package. What if the people who sent it were watching, waiting for her to make a move? The thought made her stomach churn. She considered leaving, but knew she couldn't abandon the evidence. All she could do was wait. Finally, the sound of sirens in the distance reached her ears, and moments later, 2 police cruisers pulled up outside her home. Emily rushed to the door, relief washing over her as the officers hurried up the driveway. She ushered them inside, leading them straight to the kitchen counter. "This is the package," she said, her voice trembling slightly. The note was inside. The officers examined the envelope and its contents, their expressions hardening as they read the chilling message. One of them turned to Emily, his gaze serious. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come down to the station and give a full statement. This is a serious threat, and we need to get to the bottom of it." The dispatcher's calm voice on the other end of the line did little to ease Emily's growing sense of panic. She explained the situation as clearly and concisely as she could, describing the package, the threatening note, and her rising fear. The dispatcher assured her that officers were on their way, but the minutes ticked by agonizingly slow. Unable to sit still, Emily began pacing the room, eyes darting between the front door and the offending package. What if the people who sent it were watching, waiting for her to make a move? The thought made her stomach churn. She considered leaving, but knew she couldn't abandon the evidence. All she could do was wait. Finally, the sound of sirens in the distance reached her ears, and moments later, 2 police cruisers pulled up outside her home. Emily rushed to the door, relief washing over her as the officers hurried up the driveway. She ushered them inside, leading them straight to the kitchen counter. "This is the package," she said, her voice trembling slightly. The note was inside. The officers examined the envelope and its contents, their expressions hardening as they read the chilling message. One of them turned to Emily, his gaze serious. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come down to the station and give a full statement. This is a serious threat, and we need to get to the bottom of it." The next few days were a blur of anxiety and uncertainty for Emily. She jumped at every unfamiliar sound, constantly on the lookout for any sign of danger. The police had assured her they were investigating the threatening package, but so far, there had been no updates. Unable to focus on her regular routine, Emily spent most of her time at home, curtains drawn and doors locked. She knew she couldn't hide forever, but the thought of venturing out filled her with dread. What if her stalkers were waiting, ready to strike the moment she let her guard down? One afternoon, as she paced the living room, her phone suddenly rang, startling her. Cautiously, she checked the caller ID. It was the police station. Heart racing, she answered. "Hello. Ms. Jones, this is Detective Anderson. We've made a breakthrough in your case." Emily's breath caught in her throat as the detective continued, explaining that they had managed to trace the package back to a local delivery service. Apparently, the driver had been instructed to drop off the mysterious package at her address, but had no further information about the sender or the contents. "We'd like you to come down to the station," the detective said. "There are a few more questions we need to ask you." Feeling a surge of both trepidation and hope, Emily agreed. Whatever happened next, at least she was one step closer to unraveling this terrifying mystery. The ride to the police station was filled with a mixture of anticipation and dread. Emily couldn't help but wonder what new information the detectives had uncovered, and whether it would bring her closer to the truth or plunge her deeper into the unknown. When she arrived, Detective Anderson was waiting for her in the lobby. He greeted her with a serious expression and ushered her into a private interview room. "We've been able to track down the delivery driver who dropped off the package at your home," he began, his tone grave. "After some questioning, he's admitted that he was instructed to deliver the package to your address, but he didn't know the contents or who it was from." Emily felt a knot forming in the pit of her stomach. "So what does that mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It means we're dealing with a sophisticated operation," the detective replied. "Whoever is behind this went to great lengths to cover their tracks. We're still working to trace the package back to the original sender, but it's proving to be a challenge." Emily's heart sank. She had hoped the police would be able to quickly identify the culprit and put an end to this nightmare. But it seemed the situation was far more complex than she had imagined. "What does that mean for me?" she asked, her hands trembling. Detective Anderson met her gaze with a serious expression. "It means you need to be extremely careful, Ms. Jones. This person or group is clearly not afraid to threaten you directly. I'd advise you to be vigilant and contact us immediately if you notice anything suspicious." Emily left the police station feeling more unsettled than ever. The detective's warning echoed in her mind, filling her with a sense of dread and vulnerability. Whoever was behind this was clearly determined and resourceful, and they didn't seem to have any qualms about targeting her directly. As she drove home, Emily's eyes darted around nervously, searching for any sign of suspicious activity. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that at any moment, her stalkers might strike. The thought of returning to her house, which had once felt like a safe haven, now filled her with a profound sense of unease. Once inside, Emily immediately locked the doors and drew the curtains, as if that could somehow protect her from the unknown threats that lurked outside. She paced the rooms, her mind racing with possibilities. Should she stay here, or would it be safer to leave? Who could she trust, and where could she turn for help? Exhausted from the emotional turmoil, Emily eventually collapsed onto the couch, her head in her hands. She knew she couldn't live in fear forever, but the thought of confronting her tormentors filled her with a paralyzing dread. As tears began to well in her eyes, she made a silent, desperate plea for the police to uncover the truth and bring an end to this nightmare. In the days that followed, Emily found herself caught in a constant state of vigilance and paranoia. She jumped at every unexpected sound, her eyes constantly scanning her surroundings for any sign of danger. The police had promised to continue their investigation, but so far, there had been no new developments. Feeling increasingly isolated and trapped, Emily began to consider her options. Should she move to a new location, or would that only make her more vulnerable? Maybe she could enlist the help of a private investigator, someone who could dig deeper and uncover the truth. The thought of taking matters into her own hands was both terrifying and alluring. One evening, as Emily was preparing dinner, her phone suddenly rang. Expecting it to be the police, she answered with a trembling hand. But the voice on the other end was unfamiliar, and the message it delivered sent a chill down her spine. "We know you've been talking to the cops," the caller hissed. "If you don't stop, you'll regret it." Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she listened, her mind racing with 1,000 possible responses. But before she could speak, the line went dead, leaving her in a state of paralyzed fear. Realizing that the threats were escalating, Emily knew she had to act. Summoning her courage, she decided to take a bold step. She would track down the delivery driver and confront him, no matter the risk. If the police couldn't uncover the truth, she would have to do it herself.